Hello all, this is John Friso. I first met Matt at a meeting of Society of Professional Investigators. As I listened to his episodes of PI Perspectives, other guests were answering the very questions that I was looking for. PI Perspectives provides a wealth of information. Thank you, Matt.
The Campbell Group offers best-in-the-industry pricing, service, and coverage for private investigators. With more than 25 years of experience in the industry and over 3,000 PIs insured nationally, the Campbell team has the expertise to make sure you have the coverage you need. Submit an application and receive a quote within 24 hours. Let them know you're a PI Perspectives listener on your application for $50 off your yearly premium.
I want to talk to everybody today about ScopeNow.com. ScopeNow has been a big-time sponsor of this program for quite some time, and I just love their service. I've been using them since the beginning. I'm one of their beta customers, and it's been so awesome to see them grow into the business that they are today and just how they just keep reinventing themselves and pushing themselves to get more and more information. What it comes down to is ScopeNow is a tool that you definitely need to use if you do social media investigations, any internet research, and really spending less time digging around and looking for information. I think is one of the best points of how ScopeNow can help you. Their AI platform, their analytics are amazing. You really get an idea of what you need. You're reducing the time, you're reducing the manpower that you're spending on doing this research because they're essentially doing it for you, and they're doing it correctly, which is most important. One of the new things that they're actually offering is this flagging system where you can flag behaviors and really highlight and look out for fraud. If you're doing a lot of fraud research, this is a fantastic tool, and you can set up alerts. So you have particular people that you're looking at, you can actually set up alerts to get notifications when the criteria that you set up is actually is flagged and goes off. It's really, really amazing. And their relationship and association analytics are top notch, really cutting edge and really, really cool. When they brought that out on version 3, it was a game changer. I mean, really being able to see how people interact together and having that relationship, analysis is really, really something that's cool. One of the other things about being involved with ScopeNow is their ability to offer webinars. Their team is cutting edge on putting together and getting out really, really great content. If you're a member of ScopeNow, if you know who they are, you've seen them around on LinkedIn, you'll know that they're constantly doing webinars on these new websites that are coming out, and they're really staying on top of it. And don't forget, any reports that you generate, you can actually white label those reports and put your own logos on and really make them look professional, which could equate to more billing for you as well. So check them out today. It's www.scopenow.com. They're a great, great company. They should be one of the tools in your toolbox, along with whatever kind of search engines you do. You need to make sure that ScopeNow is a part of that suite. Scopenow.com.
Welcome to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. Today we welcome longtime California PI Mike Spencer. Like Matt, Mike's had a fair share of personal injury cases over the years. The guys compare notes and talk shop on how to do these cases. So please welcome Mike Spencer and your host, private investigator Matt Spaier.
And welcome everyone to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. I'm very excited today to welcome Mike Spencer to the program. I've heard Mike years ago on John Hoda's podcast. A great investigator. Mike's well known in the industry. He's on the left coast, Mr. West Coast guy. So Mike Spencer from Spencer Legal Investigations. Mike, I want to welcome you to the program.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So I did hear you on John Hoda's program like a while ago. I think you were promoting a book. So Private Eye Confidential is the name of the book, and let's get that promotion out of the way because it's still a book that you're right.
Right.
So
If I must.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about what's the book about.
So I know some guys who run a publishing house. There's a little side project. They're both professors, and they're publishing a house is called 99 The Press. So they publish these 99-page books on different subject matters. So the one guy I know pitched me, said like, hey, why don't you write something about private investigations? And I thought, oh, what a perfect fit, because in my writing style as a former journalist, I tend to be a very compact writer.
Mm-hmm.
So I just enjoyed the format of telling people a little bit about myself and about my cases in 99 pages, because I just don't have the skill or the attention span to write something bigger.
Yeah,
so that's how it came about.
I'm with you. And how long have you been a private investigator?
Really going to date myself here.
You can lie.
I became licensed, I would say, in early 1997. And when I got licensed at the time, I argued that my newspaper reporting experience in California, we have to have 6,000 hours and then pass the examination. So I successfully argued that my newspaper experience should count for a year's worth. And then I must have worked under about 4 other investigators getting my hours to get the requirements and pass the test. So right about 97, I had my own license, but I was working I first started doing workers' comp investigations, not the surveillance part, but the interviewing of witnesses and companies.
Right.
Doing some criminal defense, doing a little of this, a little of that. And it was good exposure for working in the industry, because you sort of figure out, okay, what do I really like to do?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's so many different things we can do in this industry. I've always found, finding what your passion is and what you're good at, and just focusing in on that, which is the subject that actually we're talking about today. Which would be personal injury cases, which, if anybody knows me or my background, that's literally how I built my business, working for a law firm in-house for several years before venturing out on my own. What has been your experience as far as personal injury goes? Like, how did you get into doing that kind of work?
I met a bunch of trial lawyers. One night, I had joined a trial lawyers association as an associate member.
Mm-hmm.
So one night I go to their judges' dinner, and I know absolutely no one.
Yeah.
And I just sit down at this table with about 10 or 11 lawyers, and I'm, the only investigator in the room of like 300 people.
Right.
So that's kind of how it started. And they gave me a couple of cases, and there was a guy by the name of Rick Simmons out here who did some of the biggest cases about 25 years ago against the Catholic Church
mm-hmm.
on the West Coast. And I worked for Rick on some of his other cases, and I just learned a lot.
Yeah.
There was one case was like a guardrail collapsed. A car struck a guardrail, and we determined that they had installed the guardrail incorrectly. They were supposed to like gently collapse, except for this one, it was like a spear.
Oh boy.
So this poor woman loses control on a road, hits the guardrail, punctures her car, punctures her femoral artery, and she goes off the road, and she's down in the ditch for like 24 hours, and she's found.
Yeah. Totally
so
dead.
That was,
she's not living.
She lived.
She lived. Oh my God, really?
She lived, but
Wow.
that was one of our first cases. And the other one was this doctor is driving on a highway out here, just a sunny day, just 11 o'clock in the morning. And like a 3-pound chunk of metal comes through his windshield, hits him and kills him. And we were just like, where the hell did it come from? What the hell is it?
Right.
It didn't have a serial number on it, but what we determined was it's used like on a cargo ship to stack containers. It's like just a metal device, and obviously some trucker didn't keep it off the material. So that was my exposure to personal injury investigations.
Yeah, crazy. So, you said a couple things in the beginning. I just want to go back on. You had said, the Trial Lawyers Association as an associate member, you were able to join. Like, that is the bread and butter for getting work with attorneys, right? If you want to work with attorneys, you need to hang out with attorneys. You need to go where they are. right? And I always tell folks you need to contribute to their charities, things that are important to them, and just be present, right? Out of sight, out of mind. But there's nothing like going to an event like that and having a current client there already introduce you to another attorney and say, hey, you should use Mike. He's great at doing this stuff. Like, he hit a home run for me on this case. Like, that's the stuff that, like, whatever it costs you to be a part of that association, and there's always a buy-in, right? There's always a buy-in to be a part of that. Like, it's the return on investment. I mean, I'm talking like 100 times multiple of what you spend to get on this stuff. You're going to get back if you do it properly. And you're in the
what
right
I like about it is it's not a hard sell. It's you're going out to these things and you're not pushing for business. You don't have to hire me. It's just an osmosis type thing. It's like, oh, this guy's normal. He's a decent guy. Oh, I've met him before. So-and-so knows him. And that's
Right.
how it works. It just takes time.
It goes a long way. And then what happens is, they all have their message boards, right? I mean, I'm looking for a really good investigator. Who do you use? And one of your clients will say, hey, use Spencer. Those are the guys. You got to use those guys. And then like 2 or 3 of your other clients will be like, yeah, we use them. They're great. They're really good, right? And then the next thing you know, there's 5 or 6 people that read that on the message board that are calling you and saying, I need a good investigator. I'm not happy with what I have, or I've never really worked with an investigator. Also, like, things you can do for these trial lawyers association, they all have continuing education, right? So you volunteer to teach on it, offer something for new associates, right? So like I actually had a meeting yesterday with the president of the Trial Lawyers Association here in New York, who happens to be a client of mine. So like I went and had a meeting with him, and we were talking about things and just spitballing. And he's like, yeah, we're trying to do this like event where if a lawyer shows up and they've only been in business on their own for like less than 3 or 4 years, like we'll give them a free year membership if they sign up at that particular point. And I was like, great, I'll go even further. I'll give like a 10% discount on my services as incentive for them to join as well, right? You get this 10% discount with our partner here, Satellite Investigation. So it's like synergy, we're working together. And the guy's like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do it, right? So being like creative with your marketing and kind of understanding how to do that. And I love when I get asked to talk at conferences about this stuff, because I just love it. I love the connection of growing the business and doing it.
I admit I slipped during COVID. I lost a little. I'm naturally I'm an introvert, but I call myself like a functioning introvert.
There you go.
But COVID was sort of just this like collapse into your inner world. And I've really told myself in the last year, shake it off, get out there, go do, like, what did I do to make myself initially successful? Well, guess what? That never ends. And you just have to keep plugging.
Mm-hmm. No, you're 100% correct on that, man. And just being creative with how you're doing what you're doing too. I also you said something in the beginning that reminded me of an experience I had at one of these events. So it was a big event. There were probably 500-600 attorneys that were attending, and one of my clients was a sponsor, and they were like, hey, are you going to this event? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, don't sit at the table back there. Come sit at my table. He's like, I got a Diaz. Like, I got a really good table. It's a good location. Come sit with me. I was like, oh yeah, great. Thank you. So I go sit down, and to the left of me and to the right of me are 2 judges. Right. And I'm bummed, because I'm just like, these aren't potential clients for me. Like, these are
everyone,
and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, everybody else in this room is incredibly jealous of where I'm sitting right now, because they have the ability to sit next to, these attorneys and, or sit next to these judges. And I'm the guy who gets to sit next to the judge, and they don't. So it was like one of these things that was weird. I didn't want that seat, but they got the seats. So what are you going to do? It was super, super interesting, and I think just, understanding exactly what the attorneys need is really important too. So, you can't just decide like, oh, I want to be a personal injury investigator. Like, there's plenty of courses that are out there and source material to learn how to do that stuff, and understanding the lingo of what's important and what to look for is definitely something that's key as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, so you got your foot in the door. You got the reputation there. How did you focus? What was your target on building in and building up that business?
It was getting in, like we talked about, it was getting in that mix of attorneys. And attorneys are, maybe this isn't the right term, sort of hyper conservative about who they let into their little family.
Yeah, it's guarded, sure.
So it's just like attorneys are all word of mouth. Mm-hmm. So it was just always keeping up within those circles. The other thing too that happens, and you've probably had this happen, is there's always sort of a cycle in the business. For like 5 or 10 years, you're the darling of the one firm. And then for whatever reason, relations just don't keep up.
Yep.
And they stop using you. But meanwhile, here comes your next client. So you get in good with them. And that's just the business. You're just, there's always sort of a churn a little bit. And you always there's always that handful of clients that are either, not mine, of course, slow pay or just kind of pains. So we always sort of want to keep upgrading clients and, better cases, better clients, better cash flow.
I mean, you're going to find that in any sector, right? There's always going to be folks that take a little bit of extra time to pay that invoice. I have a strict policy on that. Strict. First of all, I get a credit card up front. Now, I'm not saying I'm running that credit card right away. I use it as backup, right? And
it's like if you're a regular with a demonstrated history of good payment, no problem, not an issue.
Yeah.
If you are from out of the area, I've never dealt with you before, and this case is going to take some hours, you're paying a retainer.
Yeah. And, just having that resource up front, I let them pay by check if they want, but I hold the card just in case. Right. And I almost never have to use that card without them wanting to do it. But it's a way to do it, and you get a sense of the person you're talking to as well. I've gotten to the point where, I've been doing this for a long time, right? I'm almost 20 years in business, and I'm not the cheapest guy out there. So, you'll talk to people and you'll get a sense if this is going to be a good fit or not. Cause they're like, oh, that's a bit pricey. It's a bit expensive, this and that. It's like, well, go use somebody else then, good luck to that. But
good
the quality,
get it and know it.
Yeah. And the good ones do. And that's the thing. And that's the difference between a bar association and a trial lawyer association, right? Because they're two separate things. So folks understand, not every attorney that practices law tries cases. And I find that the attorneys that actually try cases get it. They get it. They want the leverage. They want to investigate the case. One guy to me many years ago, he goes, I always spend money on investigations because it's like playing with house money. And for those of you that gambled, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? So it's like they take their winnings, they take the I'm ahead of the game here. Let me take some of my resources and spend it on investigating the case and working the case up, right? Now, us as investigators and understanding the personal injury world, we have to price ourselves appropriately, right? Because we don't want to price ourselves out of the market, but we want to price what we should be paid as well, right? So don't want to make yourself too cheap. You don't want to make yourself too expensive. You got to find that sweet spot somewhere in between. And you get a sense of it the longer you do it. You get a sense
of it. And I use the poker analogy all the time. It's like, all right, the attorney wants to take down a $500,000 pot. You want to be like the table bully and buy that pot. And I don't, if you have if what's at stake is a settlement of $500,000 or $1 million and you have multiple witnesses, I don't think whatever $10,000 to an investigator is an unreasonable fee. That's just the cost of doing business.
Well, here's the way I sell it. You have a fiduciary, the attorney has a fiduciary responsibility to investigate that case. If you're not putting all available resources into getting your client the max amount of money they're entitled to, you're violating a fiduciary responsibility, in my opinion, right? So, you know, and sometimes those are tough conversations because they're like, especially early on in the game, when you don't know what insurance policies are on the table, right? So when a case first comes in New York anyways, right? So, you know, nobody knows, and I'm talking motor vehicle cases, nobody knows the value of the case. They don't know how much insurance is involved until the declarations have been exchanged. But you don't want to wait that long because you want to get out there and investigate the case, right? So it could be a death case, could be a severe injury. You know, there's so many video cameras out there now. You can't wait, 40 days until the carrier gets back to you and tells you how much policy you have. And then you say, okay, well, there's money to be had here. Now we're going to go investigate it. No, you got to get out there and do it because those images are gone. Like those people are gone.
That's the big advantage too, is we deal a lot with witnesses. It's a constant of the case. The witnesses make or break the case, or maybe they don't make or break it, but they're pretty important.
Yeah.
And here's what I know of human behavior. I've done this in criminal defense and with personal injury. Is it's great to be first for the witnesses, because when those witnesses start getting approached for the second and the third and the fourth time, guess what? They throw up barriers and say, I already talked to this guy. I'm not talking to you. So getting in on the ground floor with the witnesses, and maybe that witness will think like, hey, Mike or Matt, they're decent guys. I'll answer their questions again. Getting in close with witnesses, obviously in a professional manner, is very worthwhile, and that's the other thing I like about personal injury cases is you tend to be the first to punch, so to speak.
Yeah, and there's definitely some social engineering that's involved in steering that in a way that it needs to go. So we're going to jump out and take a break here. Then we're going to jump back in. I mean, this is like, you got me salivating here because this is my wheelhouse. This is what I love talking about. And I'll try not to hog the conversation for the next 25 minutes.
Okay.
And we'll get your perspective on it because that is the reason that you're here. But I get very passionate about this stuff. So everybody sit tight and we will be right back. You guys have been hearing for a long time about how much I love Crosstracks, but now you're going to hear from somebody else. So we got George Gerges here. George is a member and a user of Crosstracks. George, tell me real quickly what you love about Crosstracks.
The simplicity of using it and the ability to customize everything that you could do with Crosstracks is awesome. It actually allowed me to take the way that I do my business and implement it into their system. And not only am I able to manage 10 or 15 cases, I'm able to manage 50 to 100 cases with the same effort.
Fantastic. So Crosstracks, the case management system, they are SOC 2 certified. Basically, that's an encryption, really an upgrade. They're the only ones out there that are doing it. So please support this great sponsor that supports our show. Check them out. The links are in the show notes. Crosstracks, if you're an investigator, you should be using them today.
Check out the PI Institute of Education at piinstitute.com. Since 1989, Kelly Riddle has been teaching on subjects such as surveillance, nursing home investigations, insurance fraud, domestic investigations, hidden assets, and accident scene investigations. The PI Institute of Education is a featured learning partner in the investigatorstoolbox.com. So check out the free content on the site, then visit the Institute for more great savings on additional classes. Are you an investigative professional with an international problem you can't solve? Conflict International has the knowledge and relationships to jump in for you. We compensate investigators for referring cases to our office. Contact us today for details. Conflict International uses insight, intelligence, investigation, risk management, and strategic solutions to solve problems troubling individuals and companies of all kinds, anywhere around the world. Whether you're planning to hire a person to a position of trust, carry out due diligence on a company, trace hidden assets, or require skilled boots on the ground, Conflict International investigators can seamlessly pursue a case across borders, offering a truly global solution. Find out about our extensive range of services at conflictinternational.com. Conflict International, global reach, international knowledge. Do you enjoy our podcast and the guests we bring you? Since 2019, Matt and his team have done their very best to give you amazing shows each week. If you feel like our show has helped you to be a better investigator, or maybe even inspired you to become an investigator, please let us know. We're looking for testimonials. Drop Matt an email with a recorded 20 to 30 seconds of you talking about this podcast. You can also email him something verbal about the website. His email is matthews@satellitepi.com. And if you really feel blessed for having this content, consider supporting Matt and our show by joining Investigator's Toolbox. You really have to see version 2.0. And at just 49 cents a day, it's a no-brainer. Now let's jump in to this week's episode.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Today we're here with Mike Spencer from Spencer Legal Investigations in California. Mike, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, so great to have you here. And I feel like we're cut from the same cloth, and we can really just go back and forth here. We're talking personal injury investigations today, and just how to succeed in getting that kind of work, how to service accounts, and what to really look for, and how to make sure you're being very diligent in what you're doing. So there's a technique to it. Before we tapped out, we talked about witness statements and social engineering. So I want to go back into that. Just because you have someone's witness information, right, a telephone number, an address, something like that, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to talk to you, and doesn't necessarily mean they're a favorable witness either, right? Always know, hey, you're going to lose your case is something that's super important. But also, realizing when you can win it and how to steer it. So what's been your experience with social engineering, and how do you approach a witness from the cold?
I tell them who I am, who I'm working for. I try to be pretty plain spoken and like, hey, you're a witness and we need to interview you. I will say things too, witnesses invariably get cold feet. And I'll say something like, they'll always be like, am I going to have to testify? And I'll say, look, probably 90 or 95% of civil cases settle. But yes, there's a chance.
Right.
You could be deposed. There could be a trial. I lay out all the possibilities, but I always tell them, you are an important witness. What you have to say is significant.
Yeah.
And I don't downplay it. I try not to upplay it. It's just be as honest as you can while still letting them know you're very interested in what they have to say.
Yeah, I mean, there's some good nuggets here that you threw out, right? Don't ever tell somebody they won't have to testify, because you don't know, right? So I always approach that as, at this point, nobody's interested in bringing you in for a deposition or trial or anything like that. In fact, your version of what happened may settle the claim. That's why we're here talking today.
That's really tricky too, because it's a careful thing to say, but what I almost want to say is, what I would like to say is, look, if we get enough evidence and overwhelm them, there won't be a trial. But I just kind of hold back on that, but I want to.
Yeah, and it's like the reason that you do something like that, approach it in that way, is you're creating value for that person. You're making them feel important. That their account is like the most important thing of this horrible thing that happened. And you're letting that person insert themselves into the story, because we like to do that, right? Look at me talking about, hey, I'm at this trial lawyers thing and I'm sitting next to two judges, right? Inserting myself in the narrative, right? People love to do it when they're talking about things, and just kind of understanding that. Never pressuring anybody, saying, hey, you're going to get subpoenaed, talk to me or else, give me a statement, or, process server's knocking on the door next. Don't do that. That's duress now.
Don't make idle threats. Don't bluff. Don't bluster.
Don't do it.
I learned it from being a newspaper reporter, because I saw just the absolutely scummy behavior by broadcast and TV journalists, like burning witnesses, like just shoving a mic in their face or whatever when they have tears, and just utterly taking advantage. And I always thought, as a print reporter, you're probably going to need people down the line. You don't want those families complaining to your managing editor, like, so-and-so just caught me at my worst moment and stole a family photo off the refrigerator. You don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. You definitely don't want to be that guy. But just understanding, like, at the end of the day, we get a job to do, right? We want to be successful. We want that person to cooperate. So you're creating a comfort level. One of the other interesting things post-COVID that's taking place now is the industry's shift towards virtual depositions, right? Yeah, they took place before COVID. They were starting to like get into it, but now almost everybody's doing it now. They love it. I mean, in New York anyways, like, everybody loves doing it. They've actually made passed laws that you're able to do it, out of state now. There's certain guidelines you got to follow, but you're able to do it. And there's that shift, right? So, I got to take a day off and go to court, or go give
not quite as painful as it used to be.
Not really. You know how to Zoom? All you do is got to hop on. Maybe it'll take an hour out of your life, or 2 hours, but you get to give your version of what happened, right? And then you obviously say, hey, listen, if it was your family member or you were injured, you would want somebody to do that as well, right? You
always run into the witness too, like, am I going to get paid?
Right.
And
I've had people tell me, like, you got to give me an iPhone. Yo, that iPhone 8 is really nice. I want that iPhone 8. I'll give you what you need.
I haven't had that yet, but people want payment, and I'm like, well, you might get a $40 witness fee, but sorry.
Well, $40, that's federal court maybe. In New York, it's like 18, They're like, I'm going to get paid. Yeah, enjoy your $18 check. It won't even cover your parking or gas to get there.
Just a sandwich, maybe.
I don't know how it is in California, but when people do come in to give to testify on cases and they're taking time off, it is permissible to allow them to be compensated for the time of work that they're missing. However, you can't just be blank willy-nilly. Oh, I make $500 an hour. It's not like that. It's more like you got to show a pay stub, and it's like, okay, you were here for 3 hours. We'll give you that, and maybe travel time and all that. So you're allowed to do that. I don't know how it is in California.
I've heard a couple things that seems fair to me and legit. I just don't know if it's part of the civil system. It probably should be.
Yeah. I mean, listen, people's time's valuable. I just got a questionnaire for jury duty in the mail the other day. I'm just like, oh man. My wife and her sister, working women, they're like jury bait. They get it like 3 times a year. Yeah. And I wrote a letter one time, like 10 years ago, that basically said, look, I'm kind of like a cop. Yeah.
And I haven't been called since.
Yeah. So I got called for jury duty like within a month or 2 of me starting my business. And I remember I was there and I get in front of the judge and I'm like, Your Honor, like I'm kind of in the business. Like I've worked on cases against the city, and this was a city case. And I'm like, he's like, what are you, prejudiced? I'm like, no, I'm not prejudiced, but there's kind of a conflict of interest here. Like I am soliciting business from personal injury attorneys that are suing the city. Like I really shouldn't be here. He's like, are you saying you can't be fair and all that? I'm like, no, I'm not saying that. He goes, well, then you should serve. I'm like, okay. I started my business like a month or 2 ago. I'm going to be out of business if I got to sit here for a month, for this trial. I'm like, I really can't do it. And he looks over at the attorneys and he's like, what do you want to do? And they're like, you can let him go. And the judge goes, back down to the jury pool. You're not excused, but you're back in the pool. I was like, I hate you. So I ended up not getting called again. But man, I was like freaking out because I'm like, literally, okay, this is going to put me out of business, man. Like, this is not cool. But it wasn't in the cards. So we'll see now. It's just a questionnaire. It's not actual call for jury duty. So we got to serve. Yeah. It is what it is. So the social engineering of that is important. You had talked to earlier about, we have certain clientele that we have very strong relationships with. They're excellent payers. Everything's going smoothly. But then there's that transition where somebody takes over the firm, maybe another partner. I've had situations where I've had that super comfortable client. I'm talking like 12, 13, 14, 15 years. And from out of nowhere, boom, just gone. Right. And like a big client. I'm talking, we were getting 35, 40 assignments a month from this firm. And it's like, wow, what happened? And it's just like, the founder of the firm is kind of retiring. The new person that came in wants to go in a different direction, or they don't think it's there. Like, that kind of stuff happens. Nothing in life is guaranteed.
And the opposite too, which is, I worked for this guy who, he gave me some cases, but he would hire younger associates.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of his younger associates have really gone on out on their own to be like big, aggressive personal injury. And so I've gone along with the ride with them. So sometimes it works out that way too.
Yeah. So there are two ways that can happen, right? So there's the employee, right? Either the paralegal or the attorney who goes off on their own, or either they're working in another firm or they start their own firm and they're bringing you along. Listen, you do quality work, they're gonna take you along. And there's that comfort level. They know your style, what you're doing. But then there's the situation, and I've had this happen a few times, where you've done a report on a case and maybe the case gets substituted out to another law firm. And they go and they look at your work product. They're going, wow, this guy's much better than the person we're using. We definitely need to use this person, right? So I've had that happen a few times. And then I've actually had where a firm that is a defense firm sees my work, and I don't do defense work. That's my thing. I'm plaintiff only. I don't know if you're that way.
I pretty much am too.
Yeah,
I'm
so,
like 98% plaintiff.
Yeah, so I'm 100% plaintiff only, and that's kind of what I'm known as. And a defense firm, like, they'll see my work product, and then the next plaintiff case they get, because some defense firms end up doing plaintiff work, they're like, hey, let's get the guy that sizzled us on this last case that just destroyed our whole theory. Like, he was good. Let's get him and use his people to do it. So, I've gotten work that way too. So it's like, you never know where your work product is going to go. These people that go out and do other jobs that work at other firms, or they start their own businesses, those are essentially your salespeople. They're your advocates. If you do a good job, they're going to sell your product for you, which is amazing, right? Really good stuff. So just keeping that in the back of your mind. Out of sight, out of mind is something that's really important too, right? Understanding, you had talked about earlier about, COVID, I wasn't really, doing what I was supposed to be doing, getting out there. I mean, listen, it was hard for everybody. I remember there were situations I was calling up attorneys, and we weren't even talking about cases. We were talking about like cooking. Yeah, what are you cooking these days? Yeah. Like that kind of stuff. Just not knowing when everything was going to get back to normal. But
I've heard this analogy before from people, and the reason you go out and put yourself out there is sort of how people's minds work. They're trying to recall information, and if they know the names of 5 or 10 investigators because you got out there a little bit, well, guess who they're going to think of? Yeah. Like, oh yeah, I met this guy 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So that's, in theory, that's kind of how it works.
I had a guy recently that he was an associate at a firm, a well-known firm, and we did some work for them. And I think like 5 or 6 years passed. He ended up going to a different firm, and he became the managing partner of that firm. And he's like, hey, calls me up and says, hey, remember me? I was like, yeah, I remember you. He goes, remember how I was just getting started in the business? I was like, yeah, I do. He goes, well, I'm the managing partner over at this firm now. And I love the work that you did. So I'd like to bring you in on this, this project and going forward. Now I'm allowed to make the calls, like call the shots on who I'm hiring. And we like to bring you guys in. So I've had that happen a few times too, which is pretty neat. So you just never know. You got to be consistent with the work that you do. Here's another thing: be incredibly consistent with your billing. Right? I don't care if the case is a multi-million-dollar case or if it's a $25,000 case. You have to bill consistently the same time. Do not mark it up because you're there. So you had referenced earlier, hey, $10,000 on witness statements. Yes, if it calls for it. If there's that much work to be done on it and there's liability there, yes. But if it's like one statement, you got $1 million case, hey, here's a $10,000 bill because,
no,
and that and all that. Don't do that.
No.
They'll pay your bill and you'll never get called again. And then you'll just get a bad reputation as somebody who overcharges. Because that's another way that you pick up cases. You pick up clients is they're not satisfied with the people that are doing their work because the investigator is maybe have questionable billing practices, bad work product, stuff like that, or maybe they get too big and
I
they're
think it's
overwhelmed.
Two things. I've heard it talked about all the time. So have you. So has anyone who's in the business for any amount of time. Are you providing value?
Yeah.
Is your information really helping them? And that's really what it comes down to. And it's the thing about our business is it is one case at a time. Back pat, you did a great job on the last case.
Right.
That's the last case.
Yeah.
So it's always that you climb the mountain and you fall off and you start again. And sometimes that's really hard. Human nature, we want to coast a little bit, but the business demands just give it your best on each and every case.
Just consistency. We can never predict the outcome, right? But what I can predict, and I tell this to my clients all the time, I can guarantee I'll guarantee the effort 100%. We will be consistent with the effort and how we approach this. But what we find, it is what it is. Like I said before, always know how you're going to lose your case. And my clients are okay with that. Like they're okay with paying me to find out they don't have a case. They would rather do that than spend years or $10,000, $20,000 on an expert when liability is questionable, right? Injuries and liability is questionable.
One of the stories that's in my book, and it just always just stands out because it really proves the value of the investigation. There was a little old lady crossing the street in San Francisco, like 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and a garbage truck made a right on red, and just like, this is gross, but it basically almost like took the skin right off her body.
Yeah.
She was like an inch away from death, grandmother of 7 or 8. And I found that really the only witness to it was a homeless guy who I could only contact via the liquor store where he cashed his checks.
Exactly.
And the morning, and this guy, he was a war veteran, but he's a pretty messed up guy. But his account of what he gave me, and then we brought him in for the deposition. And of course, we had to get him some clothes so he wouldn't smell, and get to him earlier enough in the day so that he really hadn't gotten his drink on too much. But the attorney told me later that guy made the case. They hammered on him for 3 or 3.5 hours in the deposition, and that homeless guy never wavered.
Yeah, truth is the same 100% of the time.
And the attorneys settled that one for $5 or $6 million, and I think that guy got some clothes, and I got him breakfast at McDonald's.
There you go.
That's the way life works.
That's the way it is. I mean, I had a case in Flushing, New York, where there was a dude that was selling Christmas trees on the side of the road, who was my star witness. That's transient business. Like, you're literally there for 6 weeks and then you're gone, if that. And just being able to get that guy and lock him down and then find him later on, made that case for my client, and they never forgot it. They're like, wow, I was so amazed how you were able to find this guy, and just get what we needed to get with it. And I didn't want to tell him how easy it was, because it was super easy, but I got him what he needed, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters, So we're going to wind down here in just a minute, but what advice could you give to investigators that are, looking to get into this, this vertical, that are maybe either just starting off, or maybe, they haven't really dipped their toes into personal injury? What, give me 3 things that you could give them, that would be super, super important. I'm putting you on the spot.
All right. You have to check your biases.
Mhm.
You're not really, even though as much as we do personal injury and we think maybe we're advocates for the injured or whatever, we're not advocates. That's the attorney's job. So check your biases. So if you have a hard time with someone getting $1 million or $2 because they're in an auto accident, or a piece of machinery at work failed, or whatever, if you have a problem with that, then doing personal injury investigations is not for you.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, you have to get to the witnesses very quickly. Don't dawdle. Don't put it off.
Right.
Third, be capable of having relationships with not just the lawyers, but their staffs.
Mm-hmm.
So that if you had questions, you will feel comfortable in asking them, like, hey, I'm a little confused by this.
Right.
What do you need? It should be a collaborative process with you and the lawyers. And I tell the lawyers too, I'd say, don't just give us stuff and say, go investigate. We're a team here. We need to check in every few weeks. So those would just be the quick things that I tell people.
Yeah, I always ask, like, what's your theory on liability? Understanding the mechanics of the accident. I think another tip would be, if you're law enforcement prior, understand that you're not investigating a crime. You're investigating civil litigation, and there's a different threshold for responsibility. When you're talking about biases, consider alternate possibilities. Have a theory on how something happened, but you have to consider alternate possibilities on how it could have happened. Right. Don't 100% say, and when you have that background, you're just like, I know how this happened. I can tell you exactly how it happened, right? Don't approach it that way. And when you show up to a scene to do an investigation, wait, take it all in. Go check everything out before you start really digging in. Take 5-10 minutes and just look at the scene and just understand everything that's involved here. I equate it to like Sherlock Holmes, the Robert Downey version, where in your mind you just see how things happen, right? If you slow down and you just try and think through the process of how it could have happened, and then all right, well, it didn't happen that way. Okay, it could have happened this way. It didn't happen that way, and it's almost like very scientific on it, just rolling out alternate possibilities, and whatever's left is probably what happened, right? That kind of approach.
The other analogy I use is, I'm always dealing in sports metaphors. It's like, in baseball, we're like the middle relievers. We're trying to get the case, and the closers, the Mariano Rivera's, are like they're the real auto experts and the real
dating yourself,
scientists,
original New Yorker
stuff.
And Mariano Rivera dating himself as an original New Yorker who's now on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Mariano's the best.
Right.
You know,
So we're trying to get the case to the specialist, and then they're the ones who typically, that's why they get the big bucks, because they're really, really smart.
yeah, I mean, setting the table for the engineers and giving them exactly what they need that's a whole nother show for another day.
Right.
So we're going to wind down here. Mike, thank you so much for jumping on and giving your perspective on how to handle this stuff. I hope I didn't hog up too much of the.
No. Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah.
Good dialogue by personal injury investigators.
Yeah, this is great. I thank you everybody for tuning in. We hope you learned something here, and obviously reach out to either one of us if you have any questions on how to do this stuff. And we'll catch you guys next week on the next show. Take care.
Thank you to Mike for jumping on and having a great chat with Matt. Thanks also to Campbell Insurance Group for sponsoring the show. Remember to tell them that you listened to us to save $50 when you apply for insurance. Additional thanks to the PI Institute for Education, Scope Now, Crosstracks, and Conflict International for sponsoring us. Also, don't forget about our investigatorstoolbox.com deal. You can type in version 2.0 25% to save $50 when you do join in. If you have a question or a comment about the show, email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com, and you can find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We'd like your feedback to bring you the best shows possible. And we'll be back soon with a new show, so make sure you tune in, follow us on all social media platforms, especially YouTube, and please stay safe out there.